Deep inside the National Library of Sweden sits an artifact that historical forensics cannot reconcile with the physical reality of a human lifespan. Known as the Codex Gigas, it weighs 75 kilograms. Creating it required the skins of 160 donkeys, processed into vellum to form a towering volume. The parchment itself shows an immense concentration of wealth. In the 13th century, the cost of this much high-grade leather and the rare mineral pigments used for the ink was a resource usually reserved for high royalty. On these pages, the Latin manuscript text and red headings are written with a robotic, unchanging symmetry. The handwriting never wavers, showing no signs of the physical tremors associated with aging or variations in pen pressure when a scribe grows tired. This precision extends to the red rubrication and the thousands of intricate marginal notations. The quality of the work is as high on the final page as it is on the first, suggesting a singular, uninterrupted effort. For a single human to produce this level of work would require 30 years of continuous labor. That the ink and handwriting remain perfectly consistent across that entire span is a physical impossibility, forcing historians to look at a much darker explanation. The legend begins in a 13th century Bohemian monastery with a monk named Herman the Recluse. Having broken his monastic vows, Herman was sentenced to the most brutal punishment of the era, being walled up alive inside the monastery's stone foundations. Herman offered a desperate trade for his life. He promised the monastery that in a single night, just 12 hours, he would write a book containing the sum of all human knowledge. The monks accepted the wager and locked him in a cell. By dawn, Herman was dead. But sitting on the table was the completed manuscript, thousands of words of perfectly rendered text and complex illustrations. As the story goes, Herman realized by midnight that he could never finish the task. He stopped praying to God and instead turned his petitions to the devil, trading his soul to have the book completed by sunrise. At page 580, the manuscript features its most famous entry, a full-page portrait of a horned, demonic figure. According to the myth, the devil himself drew this image to sign the contract, using a single drop of the monk's blood. His creation began a 300-year journey through European history, leaving a path of tragedy and sudden ruin for those who tried to possess it. Terrified of the book's alleged origin, the monks of the original monastery chose to hide the manuscript. They treated it as a shameful secret, locking it away and refusing to acknowledge its presence. In the years that followed, the monastery was hit by a wave of unexplained deaths and a total collapse of their finances. By the end, the surviving monks were so impoverished they were forced to pawn the manuscript to a different order just to avoid starvation. The book was acquired by the Benedictine monks of Brevnov in 1295. Unlike the previous owners, they viewed the manuscript as a source of prestige, placing it on public display and inviting travelers to study its contents. Under the Benedictines, the monastery's fortune shifted. It became a major destination for medieval tourism, bringing in enough wealth and influence to sustain the order for centuries. This history establishes the first pattern of the curse. The manuscript appeared to punish the institutions that feared or neglected it, while rewarding those who gave it a place of honor. In 1594, the manuscript was claimed by Roman Emperor Rudolf II. A man deeply invested in alchemy and the occult, Rudolf borrowed the book for his private collection and ignored every legal request from the monks to return it. Rudolf abandoned his imperial duties, choosing instead to spend his nights in the flickering light of his study, staring obsessively at the book's demonic illustrations. His mental health rapidly declined. He claimed that voices emanating from the vellum prevented him from sleeping, and he eventually fell into a state of delirium so profound that he could no longer remember his own name. Concerned by his inability to rule, Rudolf's family forcibly removed him from the throne in 1611. He died shortly after in a state of madness, having lost his empire to the very book he refused to return. For Rudolf, the manuscript was a catalyst for his psychological collapse, amplifying a personal curiosity into a fixation that cost him his sanity and his crown. Following the Swedish occupation of Prague in 1648, the manuscript was taken as war loot and relocated to the Stockholm Royal Library. It was here, in 1683, that a librarian guard named Lars reported a supernatural encounter. While patrolling the locked, windless room at night, he heard the heavy, distinctive sound of leather-bound pages turning by themselves. Lars testified that as he approached the table, he found the book open to the devil's portrait. He described falling into a trance, his eyes locked onto the demon's face as he was drawn closer to the page. When Lars leaned in to inspect the ink, the 75-kilogram cover slammed shut with enough force to kill him instantly. The violence continued on May 7, 1697, when a massive fire broke out in the royal palace. The library was consumed, and thousands of irreplaceable historical documents were reduced to ash. This scorched parchment illustrates the intensity of the blaze that leveled the archives. Yet, as the palace burned, librarians risked their lives to heave the Codex Gigas out of a window to save it from the flames. The book survived the inferno that destroyed the building around it, a recurring theme in its history, where the structures housing the manuscript fall to ruin, while the text remains intact. Today, the manuscript is kept within a high-security vault in Sweden. It is treated with extreme caution, handled only by experts wearing protective gear. However, the book that survived the 1697 fire is no longer complete. When it hit the ground outside the palace, the binding shattered, and 10 specific pages were either lost or removed. These missing pages are the subject of intense occult theory. Many believe they contained the actual rituals and spells mentioned in the legend, the specific instructions required to summon the devil into the physical world. The question remains whether those pages were lost in the chaos of the fire, or if they were purposefully destroyed by someone who believed the full text was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Whether the story of the monk is a historical fact or a centuries-old myth, the Codex Gigas stands as a monument to the staggering price a person might be willing to pay for absolute knowledge.